Good morning, viewers. I'm doing a recording, or basically recording my commentary over the match I've just played against eekarf. This was a Crazy House World Championship match. It's my first round. eekarf and I know each other a long time from Fix. We've actually met each other in New York once, played a bit of Bughouse together. So yeah, let's get into the game. Got an e4, e5. We played bishop e2, bishop e7, both passive. This is a line we're actually both familiar with. So back in the day, we would have played quite a lot of games going through this line. So that's why it's moved so quickly in the opening. This is not new to either of us. Pawn at c6 there, just blocking off knight at c7 potentially later. At the moment, it's nothing because I've got a knight on e8. But yeah, this is a good way to consolidate the center. So black's given up a piece for 2 pawns on d5, but in return has a big center. Both have a safe king. So it's basically the pawns against the knight. Now here's where I'll probably start pushing the knight on h5 away, I expect. Yeah, I thought it'd be better just to show the picture of what I looked like while playing the match, because that's probably more interesting than seeing my face while commentating. You can tell I'm actually pretty focused on the match. I mean, I wasn't aware I was that focused actually. It's a bit weird having to watch yourself. So here eekarf sacked on g7 to try to make a hole in black's king side. So black's just up 1 pawn on material, but white's seeking some compensation. So here my gameplay is very much against the h6 pawn. That's why I've left the knight on f5. And then I want to put a bishop on g5 so that I'm trying to remove h6. Now that of course is not what white would want to allow. So in the game, I think I was expecting to play knight f5, but he might have just chosen a different move order. And what that does is it allows bishop at g7, so white can still try to extract something. Now here I was just being cautious in case there was something with knight at f6, but there's too much coverage there. Bishop at f4, sensible play just to put more pressure on h6. Now it's too hard for white to continue defending h6. So here his idea is to rook sack. So if I take the rook, he plays pawn at g7, and then he's threatening rook at h8 mate. So it was in my interest to remove the h6 pawn first, and now I'm actually threatening mate on h2. I have the presence of mind to draw these arrows during the game. Rook at c8 is not there because the bishop is covering c8, and I'm now threatening the rook. So he's got to cover h2 somehow. And now here I've got a decision if I want to pick up the rook or pick up the knight. If bc, I think white maybe can play pawn at b7 and then rook f8. Rook at a8. I'm probably covering the back. Knight at f6 wasn't too dangerous. I could take with the bishop after knight f6, king h8, and the threat on h2 is renewed. So I wasn't entirely sure which piece I should capture. I just felt that black should be starting to get ahead here. In the end, I think I actually captured the knight. Maybe I should be capturing the rook. But look here, I thought maybe white had pawn at c7 potentially to try to keep something going. But yeah, I can take things and block things on the back rank. That's also okay for black. So yeah, rook c7 I felt doesn't threaten enough directly too much. So he still can't put a rook on c8. There's nothing going on with knight at e7. So I kind of get a free move here to just make a big threat, pawn at e2. And so yeah, now he puts a pawn at d7. I've chosen to sacrifice the piece of the pawn here just so that white can't promote. And now there's no rook at d8. There's no real entry quickly into black's territory. So this is very difficult for white to defend here. I'm feeling quite comfortable. You can take on f1, king takes rook at h1, pawn at e2 again, and just mop up the rook and queen, and there'll be so much material. This should be over. So yeah, I think it's good to come out of the blocks well in the first match for these sorts of games. Just settle the nerves a bit. Okay, so that's 1-0 in my favour. We're on to the second match now. So e4, e6. And I was expecting a different opening from eekarf. I mean, we played a lot more of something else. Usually he brings the two knights out first and we get a relatively blocked position, but perhaps he wasn't wanting to play into that sort of stuff. Now queen e7 here, I'm not sure about the issue with queen e7 is that it is not guarding d5 anymore. And this now allows white to put pressure on black's knight on f6, which is the sole defender of the pawn on d5. So white's kind of calling the shots here. I mean, the black queen on e7 blocks in the bishop on f8. White's hitting c6, d5, and f6. Now black isn't hitting anything yet, so pawn at h3 is a way of trying to counterattack quite sharply. And here I was considering taking the knight, but I didn't like it after queen takes e2, bishop e2, pawn at g2, rook g1, and then potentially queen at h1, where I felt that, and you can see me think here a little bit because I'm probably feeling I should just take the knight, but yeah, I mean, it might deserve another look, but I ended up playing a bit more strategic. And that's probably something important as well in this. I mean, I know my opponent here, he likes active play, he likes to be able to attack. You're not necessarily playing the best moves, sometimes you're playing the practical moves. And what I was aiming to do here is just get him to expend a pawn on d7. And what that would do is it would take away that option of him being able to play pawn at g2 and hit my rook. So by weakening b7, it makes a clear threat on c6, and then you'll have to patch that up. And now I took the knight fairly quickly, I think, because here it's more obvious. He doesn't have pawn at g2 anymore, so I'm picking up material cold. For some reason I was thinking d4, maybe I was still in the strategic mindset of just keeping the position closed. But I trust that I went for e takes f6 in the end. Yeah, so g takes f6, knight takes d5, and you know it's very difficult for black to defend. So I'm feeling I'm up a piece here, and there's still play for black, but we've just got to navigate carefully. So knight b4 played, that's good moves. That's hitting c2, defending d5. Yeah, could defend with king d1. I was going to do knight d4. I was planning some trickery with queen at e3 check potentially, and forking the king and the bishop. I decided instead I'd play knight at e3. That has a few purposes: defends c2, defends g2, but also just attacks d5 again. So plain and simple. Now we're capturing with the c knight first, so that the knight on e3 is still defending c2. And now the threats on c7 and f6 are just building. So white's a piece up, has the attack going, arguably the safer king, and so this should be quite simple for white to convert. There's already an immediate mate threat here with knight at g7 check, bishop takes g7, queen at e7. And then knight c7 and knight f6 are probably also leading to mate. So from here it's also very difficult. If you play something like queen at d6, which covers all three of those threats, then knight at b5 is quite reasonable. You can't play queen takes d5 because knight takes c7 check, king e7, knight takes queen check. So yeah, black's probably counting defenses here. Very difficult. And so yeah, so my feeling in general going to a 10-game match is that anything can happen. You know, there's still 3-minute matches, guillotine finish with no increment. There's 10 games. Good to get out of the blocks early because those first 2 wins here now give you a bit of confidence. And I've actually switched up my opening here, so I've thrown in a perk. And maybe, you know, objectively, maybe that's not the best choice against eekarf. I mean, he's a player who likes to attack, and this kind of plays to his strengths naturally. And you know, already here, I guess I'm trying to do something on e5, but I'm not really making progress. You can see I've had to pause to think here because this is a new position to my eyes. And if I don't do something quickly, he's going to play h3, you know, force my knight back, and then I'm getting attacked. So yeah, I think pawn f6 is reasonable enough. Quite sure that's what I played in the game. Not thrilled with my time management here. It's probably too much in the opening. You know, this kind of series with these sorts of stakes, you want to be saving your time for more critical positions. So I've just lost a minute there, basically. So I'm trying to just get rid of that pawn on e5 before something happens to me on f6. No, he's also taking his time here, so you know, getting the time back. So we're both playing into unknown territory now. h3 quite sensible. I could bring the knight to e5 potentially, but it just lets in pawn h6, pawn g7, and I think he's getting everything he wants. You get dark square weaknesses right next to my king, and he'll have plenty of things to take on e5. So knight h6 has to be played. Pawn at d5. If I do something like knight b4, he's got pawn at e7. You can see my face disappear on screen. I'm that focused. I'm not really aware of where the camera is. So knight e7 played to cover e7. And now pawn e6. I mean, he's just playing good crazy house here. I originally thought I had knight takes d5 to grab a pawn, but it doesn't work because knight takes d5, queen takes d5, and knight at e7 check forks the king and the queen. So white's just making progress with good development. You can see me take a deep breath again. It's kind of weird having to watch yourself. Anyway, yeah, here I'm thinking all sorts of different options. Do I take e6? You know, but black doesn't really have something to play for immediately, so it's about how to defend this. And my clock's already down under a minute, so eekarf's played a good game here already. I think what I decided in the end was that there were a lot of trades that were going to come off, and I needed to start, you know, hitting my opponent's pieces, or else h6 is just vulnerable. So this is why pawn at g5's played. But I'm going half a minute up against 2 minutes here, and I got nothing in his half. So it's looking pretty bad for me at the moment. Now he took with the bishop. I was expecting him to take with a knight actually, so that his bishop would reinforce the dark squares. And because he took with the knight, I took an opportunity to try to pick up some material, and I expected him to take h7 here. And I was going to try to hold on to g6 till I realised I should just actually drop the king back to h8 and allow him to do that. And now he's got all my light squares, but he can't actually get in through the dark squares. He'd have to get a rook for h7. So I basically got 2 pieces for 2 pawns here, and it's actually really hard for him to penetrate. Here I'm thinking bishop takes c3 check, bc, knight at h4 to try to continue attacking. Got about 15 seconds left there, and he played h4, which really disappointed me because I was trying to put the knight there. And when you're short on time, you know, he's thwarting my plans when he's anticipating what I'm doing. But he's trying to open up the h file here desperately, and now my lines are opening up too. So bishop c3 is now opening up. I've got knight g2, knight at h4 is coming, so I've got lots of opportunity, but only 10 seconds on the clock. So at this point in time, what matters most is you just got to move quick. Here I'm actually starting to pre-move a little bit, banking that he's going to move the rook. I'm looking to try to bring my queen on the back rank. And potentially, if he takes on h4, my mind is thinking, well, rook at a1. So yeah, and just keeping an eye on the back, so I can't lose a rook and get mated on h7. So already here I think black's actually better, but I'm very much under the pump on the clock. So pretty poor time management earlier in the game, and it's guillotine finish, so you can pay the price for it. Now he took the pawn on b2, so I've got to try to make quick moves. I'm playing rook at a1 pre-move. I'm basically trying to consume all of his blockers, and I'm figuring bishop f1, knight at d1, pawn e2, maybe the knight goes to c1 or b1. And I've got to take all the pieces quickly. Now he's going to try to play a few checks. Here I've just got to go make sure I don't lose on time, but I've definitely got the board. Queen at d2 is a mate threat. I think I continued a few more pre-moves. So I had mate there in 1, missed it. Just had the queen in hand, so now bishop at e2 is mate in 1. But yeah, not an ideal way to go through. I was quite fortunate that the position turned in my favour, and I found all the right moves and time pressure. But I'm pretty sure I had 2 big thinks in the middle game for 1 minute each. But yeah, I mean, can't complain. Up 3-0 now. Just gotta be practical in this, and it's a bit of an eye opener that I'm not really playing how it should be played. Okay, I thought I was going to be the aggressor in this opening, but he got some pressure on c3. And he was debating rook g1 or g takes h3, and I was going to give it more thought, and I thought it was trivial, but in fact g takes h3 is probably better, because then rook g1 already has an open file. And you can see here already I'm just not even taking f2 straight away, because the problem with this is king f2, knight e4, king f1, pawn at f2, and then black's got an attack going all of a sudden. So I've just kind of made a bit of a blue in the opening here. It's not over, but I didn't want to allow this. It's a little bit different if the pawn is on h3, and my rook has an open line to get to g7. Now it's just trapped there, and if you play rook f1 or rook h1, then h takes g2. So yeah, my body language here is indicating I'm not happy with my opening play at this stage. And my clock also suggests that. So yeah, I mean, I'm thankful that I was able to hustle the last game, have the presence of mind to play well. But here I'm looking at, I thought he would play maybe knight d2 here. He played rook f2, and I kind of underestimated rook f2. I can't play king e1 because he plays rook g2, and then he's got the pieces, the attack, everything. So I'm having to bite the bullet, get the 2 pieces for the queen. And then I'm worried here about, how can queen h4 hurt me later on? Hg is the right move. Unfortunately for me, the bishop covers f1, so he doesn't have an immediate mate threat. Queen h4 check is actually the dangerous move here. And it's whether I should play something like pawn at g3. That's what I was thinking. So I opted for bishop g5. That's to be a little bit aggressive as well. And here I thought maybe black should just play pawn at f6. Black can actually absorb quite a few checks and attacking moves, and he probably does need a few more pieces in hand, or at least a tempo to get him. Something like bishop h3. Objectively here, I wasn't sure who was necessarily better. White's got compensation if White can get some of these knights and the rook on the board. He went for an aggressive option here, and I have a feeling, yeah, this is critical here. I did cover with the rook just so I'd be threatening the queen. This only works because the bishop is defending f1 still. If pawn f2, king h1, queen f1, bishop f1, rook at g1 is made, so I've got to be able to run up to g2. Now, yeah, I nearly went to king h1 even though I mentioned it just then. Yeah, it's one of those cases where you see it the move before, then you go, hang on a sec, I've got to remember what I just thought about. Now, bishop h3 doesn't work because the rook's defended on f1 by the bishop on b5. I thought maybe he foresaw something like queen g5, bishop takes, bishop h3, but then king g3 actually wins for white. It's the last square he has to move, and then white's actually threatening queen at e7 mate. So queen g5 is not a good move. He ended up opting for queen d7, threatening queen h3, but I figured I could just take all the pieces here now. The knight can't actually be used to check the king effectively, and my call here was to just try to lock the king on e8 by having another bishop on a3, so cutting off both d8 and f8. And I've now got two rooks on the eyes of e1, which is another check to threaten. So I'm kind of naturally unraveling my pieces by developing them. And now bishop at h3 is dangerous, so I've had to remove the pawn. So I'm hanging on by the skin of my teeth, and again low on time. So yeah, I feel white's already better here now. I've survived the storm, but time is still something to be concerned about. So I know, you know, in the forums during this week there was debate about what the time control should be. You know, Fishy Vishy made a decision not to change the time control, which I think is largely based on you know, not changing it midway during the event. And I raised the point myself. It's you know, it's fair to both players in the event and also outside. Here I've got a nice mating sequence. If he goes king c8, I've got knight at e7, and then I grab c6 with the two knights when he goes to either b8 or d8. If he goes back this way, I can use the queen on the back rank and find mate with the rook. So rook d8 takes, pawn at e7, king c8, rook at d8, king e8, rook at f8. Where I was going with this was, you know, it is a guillotine finish, and you can see here how I'm having to push quite hard. You know, people are saying we don't want the event to be determined by flags, and you know, I'm of the view a little bit that you know, it's exciting. I mean, when the match is getting down to the wire, I think in Crazy House, the person trying to flag has a lot of resources to try to flag the opponent. And it's actually quite nice to see when some of the stronger players are still able to finish their opponents with little time. You know, there's a lot of nail-biting finishes that can occur, and I think that's a little bit part of the game. So, you know, the 3-0 time control has been a long-standing traditional time control in Crazy House. It's generally one of the longer time controls we play, so we're quite used to it. And it's part of what makes the game exciting, that there's a lot of variations to try to calculate in Crazy House, and having to see it all quite quickly, whether you're on the defending side or the attacking side. I mean, that's part of the game, part of the thrill in the tradition of how this game's been played. So I don't mind the time control 3+0. I mean, you can see today it's probably not really been in my favour, and I've still come up with the goods, fortunately. So yeah, I mean on this game, eekarf really went quite aggressive on my king side. He sacrificed the pieces. He's looking to sacrifice his queen to get knight e6 in. Bishop takes d1 is maybe playable, but in all honesty, I think white's king does get safe. So if you play something like bishop d1, knight e6, king down, knight takes queen, pawn d2, king d1, I didn't feel that black had enough. So I've got an extra piece in material terms. My king's been smashed up in terms of safety, but here I felt that bishop at c8 was just a necessary defense for e6. And I could have here played something like bishop d7, but then I felt it was too passive and white would start pushing with h5, and I thought, now's my time to pounce on this g3 weakness. I've got a nice open rook file on the f file. Don't mind giving a piece back on g4 for what g takes f2 will offer. And now the difference is here, giving up g4 is that the bishop is still on c8, so he still doesn't have knight e6 check available. And now I get the opportunity to hit him on a few squares. So yeah, this is where Crazy House is fun. You've both got an open king. Every move counts, every tempo counts. And rather than play bishop e3 here, where he'd play king b1, knight d2, bishop d2, that was looking okay as well. I decided to go for knight takes e3, which just looked really solid, threatening to take the queen with discovered check, which is looking like it will mate as well. And also this knight is hitting g4, so bishop g4 becomes an option. It's just an annoying move to have to deal with as white. I know it's not check, but it just makes so many threats, and white can't really counterattack in a hurry with knight e6. So here I've liked how I played this game a little bit better. I've actually spent time where it's probably mattered a bit more. I'm looking better on the clock here. And at this point, I'm not even thinking too far ahead. I'm actually just waiting on a response from eekarf. More so looking strategically, what do I want to do? Probably just remove the bishop on g4, and then kick the knight away on g5 slowly. I don't want to take it with bishop g5, I just want to remove the pieces in my half that are his. So yeah, I decided for knight g4 in the end, and I expect something like pawn h6. No, I hit the queen first. But yeah, I'm just looking to not win quickly here. I don't have a direct win on the king on b1. What I do have is a material advantage. So yeah, I shouldn't have taken that long to make that decision. Easier talking in hindsight, of course, but I know myself I was thinking that for a long time, so there's a lot for me to take away and learn here for the next match in terms of practical play. And so now I've cleared everything in my half, and now I saw knight at b4 is a good way to proceed. Didn't really need to allow this sort of stuff. Rook h7 is coming in. A bit of potential risk, but rook h7, king g8, and he has nothing to follow up with after that. I've got the queen in hand. Queen b6 is going to be dangerous. So in the end, I didn't even attend to g8 and h7. I think I just went for the attack. So yeah, he's probably trying to make some checks happen here. If he had another rook in hand, then rook h7, of course, is mating me. But yeah, I was happy with that one in the end. And by now, I'm actually up 5-0 in the series. So cruising through here. And I do want to play this event like every match counts. If there is a tie break, the way. Sorry, I should mention the way it's working is it's every game is 10 games, and it's 10 games. Doesn't matter what happens. If it's 5-all, it's a tie. If it's 6-4, that's 6-4. If you get to 8-2, 7-3, 10-0, whatever it is, it's 10 games. And the reason for that is what counts first is the number of matches that are won. Those that obtain the top 2 positions will get to play in the grand final, which is actually 60 matches in total. If for example there are 2 players that both won the same amount of matches, we will be counting the number of games won as the tiebreak. So every match counts here. Even for eekarf now, if he's to lose the next game, it's in his interest to still play well right up to the 10th game, because every point counts. So yeah, in this game, quite a balanced opening. I switched it up with d4. Part of my game plan was to try to switch openings a little bit, or else during the course of the series, your opponent gets to become familiar with what you're playing and gets to play fast. So yeah, here he went for my king. I think bishop at g3 is a good move here, and then maybe bishop takes e5. I was surprised he played pawn at g3, but this is okay, but I feel like white just gets a free attack here. The knight on e5 is quite valuable to white. Here I'm just seeing if I can put the nail in the coffin by undermining the defense on f7. I've got the queen in hand, I've got a lot going for the position. I'm just being cautious on what can happen after knight at f2. And I'm looking at rook f2, g takes f2, bishop takes h5. I was looking at knight g3 check, king h2, bishop at g1. I decided pretty quickly that it wasn't going to be dangerous, but I was regretting it during the game because there were a few lines I hadn't seen. I think it works out in white's favour in the end. But knight g3, king h2, f1 knight looks a bit dangerous. If you run up king h3, I think you get mated. Maybe not. Maybe rook at h2, king g4 is just holding. You got to be careful with like bishop at f5. It's a bit dicey because king takes f5. Oh no, king can't take f5. So white would be mated. That's what I saw in the game. So knight g3, king h2, f1 knight, check, king h3, rook at h2, king g4, bishop at f5, defended by the knight on g3, king g5, f6 check, king f4, g5 mate. So I was thinking if knight g3 check, king h2, f1 knight, I would actually have to run the king back to g1. If bishop h2, then king f2, and the king sits safe there. So you'll see me here, I'm thinking actually what I'm speaking. So knight g3, king h2, f1, then I saw king g1, rook at h1 check, king f2, bishop at g1 check, king e1. Unfortunately for black, he's got a knight on f1 and a bishop on g1 blocking his rook on h1, so he's got no discovered check. The checks run out, and then it's too difficult to defend back at home. eekarf found a different resource, which was actually quite nice. Here I probably should have spent a little bit more time considering king h2, because I think that just gets rid of the problems. And I was a little concerned I'd miss something here, but I don't think black has quite enough. F takes, king takes, rook at h1 check, king f2, bishop at e1, queen e1. If rook f1, then king h2, rook h1, king g3, bishop h4, and the king can run up this time and is safe, only because there's no knight on g3 covering the f5 square. So here, yeah, black unfortunately just doesn't have enough, and once the checks run out, yep. So there's no f5 here because the pawn's pinned, and now he's moved his king, so we just finished with checks. So there we go to 6-0. So yeah, I thought maybe an improvement there was bishop at g3 for eekarf much earlier to try to undermine the knight on e5, but allowing that gave me too much to attack with. Now here I felt I should actually be switching my openings up, and I got a bit lazy. This is the third time I've repeated this opening, and you can see now eekarf's also moving quicker. He'll be starting to form an idea in his head. He'll know what kind of position he liked. And he's actually gone straight down to this line again, which I think is good for white. And yeah, I should have switched openings up here just to mix it up. So I'm also playing quickly, but yeah, this is good for white. Now I sort of prefer rook e8 here. I was considering taking e2. Maybe I should have. I was thinking maybe he gets a bit too much activity and too many pieces. I didn't mind just holding on to that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's better or worse. Maybe there's too many trades coming off as well. So yeah, White's getting to call the shots here a little bit. You know, he gets to open up the lines. I'm definitely spending more time on the clock. I don't mind that I'm spending the time on the clock. I think it needs to be spent. But yeah, it's just an unpleasant situation for black. Now, knight f4 is a possibility here. I think it's sensible for white just to play rook h6 after knight e2, even just play bishop e2 or knight takes e2. And I felt that, you know, white just had all the minor pieces and, you know, could basically grind black for the rest of the game. So I made a decision to defend h6. And I'm not minding my position too much here. Knight at f4 is okay. Pawn at f6 was also possible, just to prevent, you know, the dark squares from getting weak. And I made a decision to grab the material on e2 over this safety. Pawn at f6 maybe is objectively a better way to go, because I'm heading down to a situation where you've got lots of pawns in hand, and you can't really do anything with them quickly. I think this is a good positional idea from eekarf to give up the queen and pick up the two pieces. The bishop was a good defender on h6. He's got open lines on the h-file. You know, he's got pieces in good positions. I don't really have any attack going for me. And that's why I was looking at hitting f5. Now here's where white has to go, well, I'm going to attack. He's got to take h7 or f7. If he backs off, then, you know, black gets to place another pawn and push white back. So I'm not surprised by a capture. Here I thought maybe I could defend and hold this. And I missed this move, which was quite nice. He's now threatening h8. I was looking for knight d2, queen g5, or if his king comes up, maybe knight at c4 helps to progress. King f1 is the right move, and he finds that. And yeah, knight at h8 is getting quite ugly. You know, white's really holding all the cards here, and yeah, this is just good, sensible play from white. I particularly like eekarf's next move, bishop d2. Basically saying if you take the knight on g5, I'm just going to take with the bishop, and you're defending the rest of the game. And I've just here missed that pawn should be defending d5. You know, my time's ticking down. This is looking all over now. Pawn f6 is going to be very dangerous. He's opted to go this way. I thought pawn f6 would have been stronger. It just really highlights how weak black is on the dark squares. So I felt he gave me a little bit of a lifeline here. Pawn at f6, I was really, nearly contemplating resigning if he played that. White's still better, of course, here. Queen at c7 was a possibility here. But I think White can just play sensible moves here, continue attacking, putting pressure on. White's just so safe at the back. I can't see how Black's going to start attacking. And with 16 seconds left on the clock, I'm calling this a win for White, even while I'm playing it myself. So yeah, I mean, this game I thought, eekarf just played well, and he could have quite possibly played into a line like this in one of the early games, but I've kind of allowed him the liberty of choosing a good line multiple times. And here I'm just making quick moves, but I think he finds mate fairly quickly. Yeah, there we have it, rook at d7. So yeah, king e7, rook at d7, king e6, rook c7 check. It's all over there. So a good win there from eekarf. And of course, good to see him not go home empty-handed. So I've taken the match 6-0 already, but all these points count. You want to, of course, try to avoid a 10-0 if you can. I'm of course trying to hit a 10-0 if I can, but yeah, it's just a good game played by eekarf on many moves. So here, I mean, e4, e5, yeah, knight at d4. I pretty quickly decided I was going to go for the two pieces in exchange for the queen. And I hesitated here because I started looking at things like pawn at e7 or bishop at e7. And if pawn e7, just queen d6 is fine. Fg, rook g8, and it's more or less the same, except I've wasted a pawn on e7, which doesn't really do anything. I've got to be careful of knight takes c3, so something like bishop at e7 might look better because it prevents queen d6, but if bishop at e7 you can just play knight takes c3, which threatens queen at d1. I then have to recapture bc, and effectively he got to trade that set of knights off. So yeah, fg should have been played much earlier here. Rook g8 is more or less forced. And here white has good continuation with knight d5, threatening knight at f6. Now this is, so queen d5 can't be played because of knight at f6 check. And here's a situation where maybe, white can actually choose something more sensible, like knight at e3, for example. Yeah, it's not actually the easiest middle game to navigate, because I found after this move, rook g2, sure, there's knight at f6, but e takes f6, knight h takes f6, king f8, bishop h6, pawn at g7, knight h7, king g8, and I wasn't finding a winning attack for white. There's bishop h6, maybe pawn at g7 is an idea, which is better preparing knight at f6. For some reason I didn't consider pawn at g7 during the game. I considered bishop h6 and I just thought it was, if it's not successful, it's just another piece hanging out there waiting to be taken. So yeah, I don't mind that I've spent a long time on this move because it's required, but it's really putting me in trouble again. And those who will have been watching on a live stream, I think some people made fair comments that I got myself in time trouble quite often. I chose something quite novel, bishop at c3, and the idea of this is it's still threatening knight at f6 later, but it actually covers off queen at a5 check, which is annoying in some lines, and also it covers g7, which can be useful later when, if you get a king on f8, you can play knight h7, knight f6, and even if the king goes to h8, you've got some pressure on this diagonal. Not only that, it actually covers e1, which is sometimes important, and I think it turned out to be important in the game. But yeah, I felt I should have got more out of this opening, and letting the pawn go on g2 without having a direct path to, finding more attack is not really ideal. Maybe it's also that you needed to be more patient with knight at f6 and playing pawn h6 sometime. But anyhow, eekarf decided he wanted to play aggressively here, so he parted with the queen. No doubt about it, he will have seen that was happening coming into this. And he was actually quite resourceful here, so I mean, bishop f3 is possible, but then he plays e takes f3, and then queen at e2 is a mate threat, which I need to cover. I decided to go down this line, and I was wanting to make something happen on the back rank. His next move is a really good move, though. I believe it's rook at d4 check, where I can't take it with the bishop, because rook takes f1, bishop takes f1, queen at e1, and now my knight on d5 falls. And I think black stands a little better here, because unfortunately I'm just short of resource to checkmate the black king. And eekarf plays well, he plays king d7. He's actually in the box seat to take this match. I'm sweating bullets here. Not even sure what I'm going to play after king d7. I was thinking queen e8, queen g4, knight f4. Queen g4 was horrible because of pawn at f5. I decided I'd try to take some pressure off d5. I was expecting knight at a4, trying to remove the defender on c3 and deliver mate. And here I started trying to concoct some kind of smothered mate trick. I was going to try to get something with knight c5. Here he's allowed rook g2, we're both down to 10 seconds. And here maybe he should have actually just started moving quicker sooner. Here I'm trying to make something happen with knight c5. And then I was trying to box him in with his own pieces, but the clock's getting quite slim now. And even here, maybe like bishop at f3 is winning, because if I take it, he had queen at e4, king g3, queen g4, if king d2, knight e4 check. So yeah, I mean he actually played that very well and very resourcefully in the end. I thought I should get more out of that opening, and I didn't. So unfortunately for eekarf there, the time went against him. But yeah, I've been under more time pressure than him, so it's important to be able to play those. Okay, so I played a more open, aggressive structure here with black for an early d5. I probably took my own advice during the match and said, "No, you've got to switch your openings up. Don't play the poke again." And I'm up 7-1 here, so I'm probably being a bit too hard on myself this morning. It's a good result. Happy to come away with winning the match for sure. I guess I just went in with a strategy, and I didn't execute it the way I thought I would today. Okay, so here I've had to back my queen off to e7 and d8, and white's covering his knight on d5. He's potentially coming in with knight b5 as well, putting two knights on c7, where I can't take on d5 because knight c7 check forks to king and queen. But I've ignored it for now because I figured I had bishop d6 to cover against knight b5. So I'm just looking at hitting him on the light squares, making something happen fast before he gets active on the e-file. So naturally for him, another plan is to hit with pawn at b5. But yeah, as black here, if I can make some dents in the light squares quickly, I'll be looking good. Now if hg, b takes c6 might be interesting, where I've got to be careful of queen e5 and what can happen after that. So that's why I haven't taken the g pawn immediately. Here I go into this facial pose where my mouth disappears off screen again because I'm just looking deep into the screen. I found this move where knight at h4 just hits g2 and f3, and I feel like I'm getting a free hit here. So now hg and I'm threatening the rook, and I thought, you know, black should be a little bit better here. I'm just managing to get into his king a bit early. I thought b takes c6 was interesting here. G takes f1, king takes f1. You know, I can't really get on the back quickly. He decided to sack his queen, which I thought was kind of giving black a bit too much. And I could play knight h4 here and face things like pawn at d7 check, where he wins back the bishop for 2 pawns. I thought that bishop would be a good defender later on, so I went with the slowly approach here and just said, well, I've picked up the queen. I've got a queen and pawn for a piece. I'm not really being attacked. I'm now hitting c6, now hitting d5 as well with the c6 pawn. And avoiding any checks. So I figured here I'll just remove that knight on g2 slowly and just seek a material advantage. So pawn at b7, he's trying to play quite actively. I've ignored it because that pawn at b7 doesn't, you know, if he takes the bishop or the rook, either of them are check. So this is threatening queen at g2. And, you know, he's got sorts of tricks with c takes d5, bishop at c6, things happening on a8. So knight h4 just forces him to place a defensive piece. I thought bishop at e4 might be a move, but later he's got to worry about c takes d5 and that pawn naturally threatening e4. So he chose to defend with bishop at g2, and I didn't want to complicate things. I just decided to take the pawn on b7, so I've just picked up a little bit more material. Pawn at f3 is coming. I mean, you can't really see anything direct for white here. So even here I decided that there wasn't much going on with rook e5. I just picked up a bit more material. Knight at f3 is coming. Yeah, there's another piece dropping on g5. So yeah, there's a phrase you say, collect them all to win. It's like collecting, you know, basketball cards or you know, things that kids collect. I'm not trying to mate my opponent here, just take all the pieces. And now pawn at g2 is mating, so he's resigned here. Yeah, that was, you know, there was a sharp opening position there. I think he kind of gave in to the pressure on the light squares and gave up the queen. So I'm up 8-1 here. And now eekarf plays this a lot in Bughouse, and I thought I'd give this a go in Crazy House. And here maybe I should play DE, just trade off a few things. I think I went for D5, which is probably okay as well. I think it's playing into eekarf's hands, allowing this sort of opening. I mean, normally I would play, a more closed position. I'd push e5 instead of playing e takes d5. And, this is the kind of position he'll like, getting pieces forward, making some threats. And I thought here pawn c3. I think after knight f3, I thought gf, and just completely missed knight takes d5 here. C4 doesn't really work because of knight e3, bishop a5, knight d1, which is okay for white potentially. Maybe I should have played c4 here. In fact, I think it's better than what I got in the game. But I'm just a pawn down here. Maybe queen takes f3 was required as well. I think I tried to get creative here, and the tactics just work out in favour for black. I think if he plays knight e3, maybe I'm looking alright. But eekarf plays a good move here. Knight f4, just avoiding the trades. Basically controlling g2, e2, d3. Now my pieces look silly. I've got a knight hanging out on b5, doing nothing. I don't have any pieces in hand. He's got 2 pawns and a knight. So, yeah, eekarf's played a good match here. There were some ideas with knight c4, queen b5, knight d6, bishop takes b5, but if I played knight c4, I think he was just going to play pawn at g2 and threaten to take the rook or take the bishop. Here another great move, pawn at d3, blocking off a defense to b5. And this is the kind of situation where eekarf will not settle for anything less than best. I expect him to place pieces on the board aggressively, see the board for what it is, and he sacked the queen very, very willingly, knowing pawn at e2 is very strong. And I've got to be careful of getting mated here. So let's say queen b1, e takes f1, rook takes f1, knight at g2, knight takes, king d1, bishop at e2 is mate. It's that simple, that easy. If e takes f1, king takes f1, I didn't like bishop h3 check. Potentially bishop h3, king e1, d takes c2, very dangerous. If queen takes c2, knight at d3 check, king d1, pawn at e2 mate. So I'm basically, yeah, you can see I've got my head in my hand here, looking at all the ways I can lose. Even though white has the queen, black's king is just so far away and safe. So yeah, pretty disappointed with how I played the last game, but eekarf, he had a small edge, he didn't let go. This is desperation, pawn at c6. I mean, black could probably even play knight takes g1 and just say pawn d7, I'm going to take it all, and what are you going to do? More sensible, more practical here is just to place another defender on d7, which is what he's done. And that's lights out. I can't take the knight on e2 because of knight at d4. It's too dangerous. Very hard to get any counterplay here. Knight g1 is hanging. Yeah, this is another move that can be ignored, but you just cover c7. And that's all the hopes and dreams for white being crushed. So look, yeah, we wrap up that series at 8-2. I don't think it reflected how close the matches were. I certainly got myself into time trouble more often than I should have. Fortunately, I've been able to pull myself out of that. I've been fortunate as well. I've been quite sick the last week with a flu. So I'm happy I was able to get through the match with a victory. So I come away with 8-2. I mean, well fought to eekarf. Possibly deserved a closer scoreline, given how many opportunities he had. But okay, look, I'm going to close this recording off here. We're just getting started into the round of 8. I should post another video just covering what this is, but Krosky's also put an announcement out to Elite Chess. Check that out. Hope you enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.